The colony ship Meridian screamed through the atmosphere of planet Cathara, trailing fire and smoke behind it like a wounded beast. Inside the vessel, alarms blared and red lights flashed across every corridor. Captain Holland gripped his seat as the ship shuddered violently, metal groaning under the stress of emergency descent. They had no choice. The main engines had failed 3 hours ago, and now gravity was dragging them down toward the desert world below. In the passenger section, families huddled together as the ship bucked and swayed. 8-year-old Lily Parker clutched her mother's hand tightly, tears streaming down her face. Her father wrapped his arms around both of them, whispering that everything would be okay. But Lily could hear the fear in his voice. She had never seen her parents look so scared before. The impact came suddenly. The ship hit the ground and bounced, then skidded across the sandy surface for what felt like forever. Lily was thrown against her restraints, the breath knocked from her lungs. Somewhere behind her, people were screaming. Metal tore and twisted. Then everything went still. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the emergency systems kicked in, and automated voices began instructing everyone to evacuate immediately. The passenger bay doors hissed open, and hot desert air rushed inside. It was like opening an oven door. The heat hit Lily's face like a physical blow. People started pushing toward the exits in panic. Lily's father pulled her up from her seat and grabbed her hand. Her mother was already moving toward the door, following the crowd. They shuffled forward in the mass of bodies, everyone desperate to get outside and away from the damaged ship. As they stepped out onto the sand, Lily looked around in wonder and fear. The sky was a strange orange color, and 2 suns hung above the horizon. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, broken only by jagged rock formations in the distance. The heat was unbearable, making it hard to breathe. Someone shouted that they had picked up a distress beacon from the mountains to the north. There was a habitable zone there with water and shelter. The survivors began gathering whatever supplies they could carry. Transport vehicles were being pulled from the cargo bay, small hovercrafts that could carry groups across the desert. Then the wind started picking up. Within minutes, it became a roaring force. Sand began to whip through the air, stinging exposed skin. People covered their faces and tried to see through the growing storm. A crew member yelled that a radiation surge was coming from one of the suns. They had maybe an hour to get clear of the crash site. Panic set in completely. People stopped being organized and just ran for the transports. Lily's father pulled her toward one of the vehicles, but the crowd was too thick, bodies pressed against her from all sides. Someone's elbow hit her face. She cried out and stumbled, her hand slipping from her father's grip. Lily fell to her knees in the sand. She looked up, trying to see her parents, but there were too many legs and bodies between them. She screamed for her mother, but her voice was lost in the wind and chaos. She tried to stand, but someone knocked into her again, sending her sprawling. By the time she got back to her feet, the transport was moving. She ran after it, calling for her parents, but the wind was too loud. Sand filled her mouth and eyes. She could barely see anything now. The storm was getting worse every second. Lily wandered through the chaos, crying and searching. Other transports were leaving, packed with people. She ran to one, but it was already full and pulling away. She chased after it, but her legs were too short and it was too fast. The vehicle disappeared into the sandstorm. The crash site was emptying quickly. In their terror and haste, everyone assumed someone else had gotten the children. Lily's parents, already loaded onto a transport on the far side of the ship, thought their daughter was on a different vehicle with neighbors they had been sitting near. In the confusion and fear, nobody stopped to check. Within 20 minutes of the crash, the last transport departed. Lily stood alone near the broken ship, screaming into the wind for anyone to come back. But nobody heard her. Nobody came. The radiation storm was coming, and survival meant movement. The colonists raced toward the mountains, toward safety and shelter. Lily tried to follow on foot, but she didn't know which direction they had gone. The sandstorm erased all tracks within seconds. She walked blindly, stumbling over rocks, falling and getting back up. Her throat became raw from calling out. Her lips cracked from the heat and dryness. Eventually, exhaustion took over. Lily collapsed near a large piece of debris that had broken off from the ship during the crash. She crawled underneath it, seeking shelter from the cutting wind and sand. She found an empty water container that someone had dropped, but there was nothing inside. She hugged it to her chest anyway, curling into a ball. The storm raged for hours. Lily drifted in and out of consciousness, dreaming of her mother's voice in her father's arms. She dreamed of earth, of grass and rain and cool breezes. When she woke, her mouth was so dry she couldn't swallow. The suns were setting, turning the sky deep purple and red. Night brought cold instead of heat. Lily shivered under the debris, too weak to search for better shelter. She had never felt so alone in her life. The desert made strange sounds at night. Things howled in the distance. She pulled herself into an even tighter ball, tears drying on her cheeks because she had no water left in her body to make more. 3 days passed in a blur of heat and cold, thirst and hunger. Lily stopped moving. She lay half buried in sand that had drifted around her shelter. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. Her skin was burned from the harsh suns. She clutched the empty water container and thought about her parents. She wondered if they were looking for her. She wondered if they missed her. Part of her, the part that was starting to fade, wondered if they had simply forgotten about her in their rush to survive. On the 3rd day, she heard a sound like thunder. Something massive was moving across the desert, each footstep shaking the ground. Lily tried to open her eyes, but her eyelids were crusted with sand. She managed to lift one hand weakly, then let it fall back to the ground. She felt the vibrations getting closer. A shadow fell over her, blocking out the burning light of the twin suns. Something enormous was standing above her, something that breathed with a sound like wind through a cavern. Lily forced her eyes open just enough to see bronze scales glinting in the sunlight. A massive head lowered toward her, eyes like molten gold studying her small form. The creature's breath washed over her, hot and smelling of sulfur and ancient stone. A dragon, Vraxith, stared at the tiny human child half buried in the sand. He had come to the crash site to investigate the damage these invaders had caused to his territory. Dragon law was clear about such matters. Humans who violated sacred lands were to be eliminated or driven away. That was how things had always been done. But this was just a child. A dying child. He lowered his massive head closer, his golden eyes studying her small face. She was burned by the suns, her lips cracked and bleeding. Her breathing was shallow and weak. He could see the tracks in the sand around her pitiful shelter. Someone had walked away, many someones. They had left her here to die. Vraxith felt something stir in his chest, something he had not felt in centuries. It was anger, but not at the child. It was anger at whoever had abandoned such a helpless creature. He extended one enormous claw and gently brushed sand away from her face. The child's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glazed with fever. Her lips moved, barely making sound. "Please don't hurt me." The words were so quiet he almost missed them, but they struck him like a physical blow. This tiny being dying in the desert still had the strength to ask for mercy. She did not beg for water or help. She only asked not to be harmed further. Vraxith made his decision. Dragon Honor Code was ancient and sacred. It had many laws, but the oldest law of all was this: the strong protect the weak. The powerful show mercy to the helpless. Any dragon who harmed a defenseless youngling of any species brought shame upon their entire lineage. He carefully scooped the child up in his foreclaw, cradling her against his chest as he launched into the air. His wings beat strongly, carrying them across the desert toward his canyon home. He felt her tiny heartbeat against his scales, fragile and fading. He flew faster. His dwelling was carved into the side of a massive red canyon, a cave system he had expanded over many years. Deep inside was an underground spring, one of the few reliable water sources in this harsh desert. Vraxith landed at the entrance and carried the child inside, moving carefully through passages that seemed too small for his bulk, but which he navigated with practiced ease. He laid her gently on a smooth rock near the spring and used his claw to bring water to her lips. At first she did not respond, but then instinct took over and she swallowed. He gave her more, slowly, knowing too much too fast could harm her. After several minutes her breathing became stronger. Over the next hours, Vraxith tended to the human child with a care that surprised even himself. He brought her more water. He retrieved desert fruits from his storage caves, sweet purple orbs that his kind cultivated in hidden gardens. He crushed them into pulp she could swallow easier. He used cool water to wash the sand from her burns. As darkness fell, he realized the cave was too cold for her. Dragons regulated their body heat naturally, but humans were fragile that way. He breathed gently on a pile of dried brush, igniting it with a small flame. The fire cast dancing shadows on the cave walls. The child slept for 2 full days, waking only to drink water and eat small amounts. Vraxith stayed near her, watching her breathe, making sure she lived. During this time, he felt the mental touches of other dragons through their telepathic network. They sensed what he had done. They sensed his choice to save a human. He felt their confusion, their disapproval, their judgment. He blocked them out and focused on the small life in his care. On the 3rd day, the child opened her eyes fully for the first time. She looked around the cave with confusion. Then her gaze found him. She should have been terrified. Instead, she just stared at him with quiet curiosity. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice rough and damaged from thirst and screaming. Vraxith nodded his great head slowly. He could not speak human languages easily, but he understood them well enough. He had listened to human communications for years, studying these strange creatures who had come to his world. The child sat up slowly, wincing from her burns and bruises. She looked at the water, the food, the fire. Then she looked back at him. "Thank you." 2 simple words, but they carried weight. Vraxith felt that strange stirring in his chest again. He rumbled low in acknowledgement. Over the following days, the child grew stronger. She told him her name was Lily. She was 8 years old. She came from a planet called Earth, far across the stars. Her people had been trying to find a new home because their old world was dying. She spoke slowly at first, still weak, but gradually her voice gained strength. Lily asked if he had seen other humans. Vraxith hesitated, then used his claw to draw in the sand of the cave floor. He sketched mountains, then pointed north. The human colony was there, many days' journey away. He watched her face fall as she understood. They had left her behind. They had moved on without her. "Did they look for me?" she asked quietly. Vraxith could not answer that. He did not know if they had searched before fleeing. All he knew was that she had been alone for 3 days before he found her. 3 days was a long time not to find one small child near a crash site. Lily was quiet for a long while after that. She sat by the fire, hugging her knees, staring at nothing. Vraxith wanted to comfort her, but did not know how. He was a dragon, not a parent. Not anymore. His own daughter had died of illness 500 years ago, and the pain of that loss had never fully healed. But slowly, Lily began to adapt. She explored the cave system carefully, staying within the areas Vraxith showed her were safe. She helped him organize his collection of crystals, sorting them by color and size. Dragons collected beautiful stones as a hobby, and Vraxith had gathered thousands over his long life. Lily seemed to enjoy the task, humming strange melodies as she worked. The humming caught Vraxith's attention. The sounds were unlike anything he had heard before. They were simple but pleasant, rising and falling in patterns that somehow made the cave feel less empty. He found himself looking forward to hearing those songs. Lily began asking questions about everything. What did he eat? How old was he? Did dragons have families? Could he breathe fire like in Earth stories? Vraxith answered as best he could, using drawings in sand and simple gestures. Gradually, they developed a way to communicate that worked. He taught her about Cathara's dangers, the scorpion-like creatures that hunted at dusk, the plants with thorns that carried poison, the way to find water by watching where certain birds flew. The signs that a sandstorm was coming. Lily listened carefully to everything, her young mind absorbing information quickly. In return, she drew pictures for him in the sand. She showed him what Earth looked like, with its blue oceans and green forests. She drew her family, her parents, and her home. She drew the ship and the crash. As she drew, she talked, and Vraxith listened. He began to understand these humans better. They were not just invaders, they were refugees, desperate and afraid. 2 weeks passed in this way. Vraxith found himself growing attached to the small human. She made his empty cave feel alive again, her laughter when she discovered something new, her concentration when she worked on his crystal collection, her quiet presence by the fire at night, all of it filled a void he had not realized existed. Then, one evening, 3 dragons landed at his cave entrance. Vraxith recognized them immediately. They were council members, enforcers of dragon law. The lead dragon was Carthex, an ancient warrior with silver scales and cold eyes. Lily scrambled behind Vraxith, pressing herself against his back leg. He felt her trembling and spread his wings protectively, a gesture that did not go unnoticed by the visitors. Carthex spoke in the dragon tongue, his voice echoing through the canyon. "Vraxith, you have violated sacred law. You harbor a human, one of the invaders who defile our lands. Explain yourself." Vraxith stood tall before the 3 council dragons, his wings still spread protectively over Lily. He could feel the child shaking against his leg, but she did not run or cry out. She simply held on to him, trusting him to protect her. He responded in the dragon tongue, his voice deep and steady. "I found this youngling abandoned in the wasteland, left to die by her own kind. The code of protection applies to all helpless young, regardless of species." Carthex's eyes narrowed. His silver scales glinted in the fading sunlight. "The code does not extend to invaders. These humans have damaged sacred sites, stolen water, and built their colonies on forbidden grounds. They are pests to be removed, not protected." The other 2 dragons remained silent, but their posture showed agreement with Carthex. One of them, a smaller dragon with green scales, kept glancing at Lily with obvious distaste. Vraxith felt anger rising in his chest. She is a child, 8 years old. She has harmed nothing and no one. Would you have me leave her to die in the sand? What honor is there in killing the defenseless? Karthek stepped forward, his claws scraping against stone. Your attachment to this creature has clouded your judgment, old friend. We have received reports from the telepathic network. You have kept her for 2 weeks. You teach her. You feed her. You care for her as if she were dragonkin. This is not protection. This is adoption. Behind him, Lily peeked around his leg. She could not understand the dragon language, but she could read the tension in the air. She could see the anger in the silver dragon's eyes. Vraxith lowered his head, meeting Karthex's gaze directly. And if it is, does our code not honor those who show mercy? She was forsaken by her people. I will not forsake her as well. The green dragon spoke for the first time. The human colony's been causing problems. They drain underground water reserves.
They hunt our sacred creatures for food. They multiply quickly.
If we show mercy to one, more will come. They will see weakness and exploit it. Or Vraxith countered, they will see honor and respect it. Have we even tried to communicate with them? To establish boundaries they might actually understand and follow? Karthik let out a low growl. We do not negotiate with invaders. But I see you will not be swayed easily. The Council has discussed your situation. We offer you an ultimatum. Return the human child to her colony within 1 lunar cycle. If you do this, your violation will be forgiven. If you refuse, you will be exiled from Dragonlands. You will be stripped of your council seat and cast out as honorless. The words hit Vraxith hard. Exile was a fate worse than death for a dragon. To be cut off from the telepathic network, to be denied access to sacred sites, to be declared honorless before all dragonkind, it was a severe punishment. Lily must have sensed his distress because she squeezed his leg tighter. She whispered up to him in her language, It's okay. I don't want you to be in trouble because of me. Vraxith looked down at her, this small, brave creature who had already lost so much. She was willing to sacrifice her safety for his honor. The gesture touched him deeply. He turned back to Karthex. 1 lunar cycle. I will return her to her people, but I will do so on my terms, ensuring her safety. Karthek studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Agreed. But Vraxith, when you deliver her, that must be the end of it. No more contact, no more protection. She returns to her kind, and you return to yours. The separation of species must be maintained. The 3 council dragons launched into the air, their massive wings creating gusts that scattered sand across the canyon. Vraxith watched them disappear into the darkening sky, feeling a heavy weight settle in his heart. Lily tugged on his leg. What did they say? Are you in trouble? Vraxith turned to her and nodded slowly. Using his claw, he drew in the sand. He sketched the mountains where her people were, then drew a path from his canyon to that distant place. He pointed to her, then to the mountains, then held up his claws to indicate the number 20.8, the days in 1 lunar cycle. Lily's eyes filled with tears. You have to take me back. He nodded again. She was quiet for a long time, looking at the drawing in the sand. Then she spoke softly. Will I ever see you again? Vraxith had no answer for that. The council's orders were clear. He drew a large X through the path between them. Lily wiped her eyes roughly with her hands. Then we should make the time we have count. Over the next week, Vraxith prepared for the journey. He gathered supplies, dried fruits and strips of preserved meat that Lily could carry. He found a cloth pack that had been left behind by previous human explorers and filled it with essentials. He taught Lily more survival skills, showing her how to find north by watching the stars, how to signal for help using reflective surfaces, how to conserve water in the desert heat. Lily worked alongside him without complaint. She seemed determined not to waste the remaining time together with sadness. She still hummed her earth songs while organizing his crystals. She still drew pictures in the sand, though now she drew memories they were making together. Vraxith learning to understand her laughter. The 2 of them sitting by the fire, the way she looked so small next to his massive form. One evening, as they sat by the spring, Lily began weaving something from dried desert grass. Her small fingers worked carefully, braiding the strands together in a complex pattern. It took her 2 days to complete, working during rest periods. When she finished, she held up a bracelet, circular and strong despite being made from simple materials. She walked over to Vraxith and held it out to him. For you. So you remember me. Vraxith extended his foreclaw, and she slipped the bracelet onto his smallest talon. It was tiny against his massive claw, but it fit perfectly. He stared at it, this simple gift made with such care. No one had given him a gift in centuries. Dragons did not typically exchange such tokens. He rumbled deep in his chest, a sound of appreciation and gratitude. Then, carefully, he plucked a small bronze scale from his shoulder, one that had been loose and ready to shed. He placed it gently in Lily's palm. It was warm from his body heat and glinted like polished metal. Lily's eyes went wide. "I can keep it?" He nodded. She clutched it to her chest, then found a piece of cord and threaded it through a natural hole in the scale. She tied it around her neck like a pendant. "Now we match." That night, as Lily slept by the fire, Vraxith looked at the bracelet on his claw and felt something crack in the armor around his heart. He had not wanted to care for this human child. He had only intended to save her life and return her. But somehow, in these few weeks, she had become important to him. She filled the empty spaces in his ancient life with her songs and laughter and innocent trust. He understood now why the Council was concerned. Attachment between species was dangerous. It complicated things. It made necessary separations painful. But as he watched Lily sleep peaceful and safe, he could not regret his choice to save her. The next morning, they began their journey. Vraxith carried Lily on his back as he flew low over the desert. She held on to the ridges of his spine, no longer afraid of heights. She pointed out interesting rock formations and called out when she spotted desert creatures below. They traveled during the cooler evening hours and rested during the day when the twin suns made flying too exhausting. At night, they camped in caves or under overhangs, and Vraxith taught Lily more about the stars of this world. On the third night of travel, Lily spoke quietly as they sat by their small fire. "Vraxith, can I ask you something?" He turned his head toward her, listening. "Did you have children? Dragon children, I mean?" Vraxith went very still. The question touched on a wound that had never healed. Slowly, he nodded. "What happened to them?" He drew in the sand beside the fire. He sketched a small dragon, then made a mark to indicate sickness. Then he drew the small dragon fading away. His daughter had been young, only 50 years old, barely more than a hatchling by dragon standards. The illness had come quickly, and no healer could stop it. She had died in his arms while he held her and sang the old songs. Lily was quiet, processing what he had shown her. Then she moved closer and leaned against his side. "I'm sorry. That must have hurt so much." It had. Still did. But somehow, having Lily acknowledge that pain made it feel a little lighter. Vraxith wrapped his wing gently around her, sheltering her from the cool night air. "Is that why you saved me?" she asked softly. "'Cause I reminded you of her?" Vraxith considered the question. Perhaps that was part of it. But it was more than that. He had saved Lily because it was right. Because she deserved a chance to live. Because mercy was what separated the honorable from the cruel. He touched his claw gently to the top of her head, a gesture of affection. Lily smiled up at him. "I'm glad you found me, even if we have to say goodbye soon." On the 5th day of their journey, something went wrong. They had stopped to rest in a shallow cave as the twin suns reached their highest point. Lily was practicing the knots Vraxith had taught her, tying and retying strips of cloth. Vraxith rested near the cave entrance, his eyes half closed but his senses alert. The attack came without warning. 6 Karathiks burst from beneath the sand where they had been hiding. They were massive predators, each the size of an earth lion but with 6 legs and jaws that could crush stone. Their scales were the color of sand, perfect camouflage. They had been tracking Lily's scent for days, patient hunters waiting for the right moment. Vraxith roared and threw himself between the creatures and Lily. His tail whipped around, catching 2 of the Karathiks and sending them tumbling. His claws slashed at another, tearing through its thick hide. But there were too many, and they were fast. One of the Karathiks lunged past him, going straight for Lily. She screamed and rolled to the side, the creature's jaws snapping shut where her head had been seconds before. Vraxith grabbed it by the tail and yanked it back, throwing it against the cave wall with such force that rocks fell from the ceiling. The battle was fierce and brutal. Vraxith fought with the fury of a parent protecting their young. His fire breath scorched 2 of the Karathiks, forcing them to retreat. His claws and teeth found flesh again and again. But the creatures were relentless, driven by hunger and the promise of an easy human meal. One Karathix managed to bite down on Vraxith's wing, its teeth tearing through the delicate membrane. He bellowed in pain and slammed the creature into the ground, but the damage was done. Blood dripped from the wound, dark and thick. Finally, after what felt like forever, the remaining Karathix retreated. 3 of their pack were dead and the others were wounded. They disappeared into the desert, seeking easier prey. Vraxith stood guard at the cave entrance for several minutes, making sure they were truly gone. Then his legs buckled and he collapsed. Lily rushed to his side, her hands shaking. The wound in his wing was terrible, a jagged tear that went nearly halfway across the membrane. Blood pooled on the cave floor. Without his wing working properly, Vraxith could not fly. They were stranded. "What do I do?" Lily asked frantically. "How do I help you?" Vraxith tried to gesture toward a supply pack, but the pain was too intense. He lowered his head to the ground, breathing heavily, his vision blurred at the edges. Lily did not wait for instructions. She remembered what he had taught her about injuries. She grabbed the water container and the cleanest cloth she could find. She carefully washed the wound, trying not to hurt him more, though she knew it must be painful. Vraxith bore it in silence, only his ragged breathing showing his distress. She tore strips from her own shirt and used them to bind the wing, holding the torn membrane as close together as possible. Her hands were small, and the task was difficult, but she worked with steady determination. She had seen her father bandage injuries back on Earth. She tried to remember everything he had taught her. When she finished, she sat back and looked at her work. It was not perfect, but it was the best she could do. "Is that okay?" she asked quietly. Vraxith lifted his head slightly and looked at his wing. Then he looked at Lily, this small human child who had just saved his life with her quick thinking and careful hands. He rumbled softly, a sound of gratitude and approval. Lily smiled, though tears were streaming down her face. "You saved me, now I saved you. We're even." They stayed in that cave for 3 extra days while Vraxith healed. Lily took care of him, bringing him water from a nearby spring she found by following the trail of birds, just as he had taught her. She gathered desert fruits and even managed to catch a small lizard that she cooked over a fire. It was not much, but it was something. During those days of forced rest, their bond deepened even further. Lily talked to Vraxith about everything. She told him about Earth, about going to school and playing with friends. She told him about her favorite foods and the books she loved to read. She talked about her parents and how much she missed them, but also how hurt she felt that they had left her behind. Vraxith listened to all of it, unable to speak but communicating through gentle sounds and gestures. He found himself memorizing every detail of her face, the way she smiled when she succeeded at something, the furrow in her brow when she was concentrating, the sound of her voice when she hummed those Earth songs. On the 4th day, Vraxith tested his wing carefully. It still hurt, and he would not be able to fly long distances, but he could manage short flights. They needed to keep moving. The lunar cycle was passing, and they still had days of travel ahead. They continued their journey, but now they moved more slowly. Vraxith could only fly for short periods before needing to rest. Lily walked sometimes to spare him the extra weight. She was getting stronger, toughened by the desert and the journey. She no longer complained about the heat or the long distances. One evening, as they crested a large dune, they saw it. In the distance, built into the side of massive cliffs, was the human colony. Lights glowed from windows carved into the rock. Solar panels covered every available surface. Defense towers stood at regular intervals, their sensors sweeping the desert for threats.
Lily stopped walking and stared. Somewhere in that settlement were her parents.
The people who had left her behind. She felt a confusing mix of emotions, hope and anger, longing and fear. Vraxith sensed her hesitation. He lowered his head and gently nudged her forward. They had come this far. They needed to finish the journey. As they approached the colony, alarms began to sound. The defense systems had detected Vraxith. Red lights flashed from the towers. Automated weapons turned to track his movement. A voice boomed from speakers, ordering the dragon to leave immediately or be fired upon. Lily ran forward, positioning herself between Vraxith and the colony. She waved her arms and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Stop! Don't shoot! He's my friend! He saved me." For a moment, nothing happened. Then figures appeared on the walls of the colony. The people shouting and pointing, the weapons stayed trained on Vraxith, but they did not fire. A gate in the cliff face opened, and people began pouring out. Lily saw familiar faces. Neighbors from the ship, crew members, and then she saw them. Her parents. Her mother screamed her name and started running. Her father was right behind her. They crossed the distance in seconds and threw their arms around Lily, all 3 of them collapsing into the sand together. Her mother was sobbing, saying her name over and over. Her father held them both so tightly it hurt. "We looked for you," her mother gasped, between sobs. "We looked for days. We thought you were dead." "Oh, my baby, you're alive." Lily felt tears streaming down her own face, but she also felt confused.
they had looked for her, then why had they left?
Why had she been alone for so long? More colonists gathered around, keeping the wary distance from Vraxith. A dragon stood perfectly still, not wanting to provoke the weapons that were still aimed at him. He watched the reunion with mixed feelings. A man pushed through the crowd. He was tall and broad-shouldered with gray hair and a stern face. He wore a uniform that marked him as the colony leader. "Get that child away from the dragon. Security team, prepare to fire." Lily pulled away from her parents. "No, you can't hurt him." "He saved my life." The leader, whose name was Gregory Hayes, stared at her. "That creature is dangerous. Dragons have been sabotaging our equipment for weeks. They've made it clear they want us gone." "He's not dangerous," Lily insisted. "He found me dying in the desert, and he took care of me. He taught me how to survive." "He protected me from monsters. He brought me home." Vraxith watched the exchange, understanding enough of the human language to follow. He was surprised to learn that dragons had been attacking this colony. He knew his kind resented the human presence, but he had not realized they had moved to active sabotage. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Colonists stood in clusters, some with weapons drawn, others simply staring in shock at the massive bronze dragon and the small girl defending him. Gregory Hayes held up his hand, signaling his security team to hold their fire, but the weapons remained trained on Vraxith. Lily's mother gently touched her daughter's shoulder. "Sweetheart, please come away from it. You're safe now. You don't have to protect that creature anymore." "His name is Vraxith," Lily said firmly, "and I'm not protecting him because I have to. I'm protecting him because he's my family." The word hung in the air. Family. Her parents exchanged shocked glances. Her father knelt down to her level. "Lily, we're your family. We've been heartbroken thinking you were gone. We searched the crash site for 3 days straight. When the radiation levels got too dangerous, we had to pull back. We never stopped hoping you'd survived." Lily looked at her father's face and saw the truth there. She saw the exhaustion, the pain, the genuine relief at finding her alive, but she also felt the anger that had been building inside her. "You left me there. I was so scared, and everyone just left." Her mother's face crumpled. A storm came so fast, everything was chaos. "We thought you were on another transport with the Collins family. By the time we realized you weren't with them, it was too late to go back. The radiation storm would have killed us all." Gregory Hayes stepped forward, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Your parents organized search parties every day for 2 weeks. We sent out drones, scanned the area repeatedly, but the crash site is in a radiation zone now. We couldn't risk more lives. I'm sorry, child, but we truly believed you had died." Lily processed this information slowly. They had looked for her. They had tried. Maybe they really hadn't just forgotten her. The anger inside her chest loosened slightly, though it did not disappear completely. But then Hayes continued. "However, that doesn't change the fact that dragons have been attacking our colony. They've destroyed water collectors, damaged solar arrays, and driven away livestock we desperately need. That creature behind you is one of them." Vraxith made a low sound in his throat. Lily turned to look at him and saw confusion in his golden eyes. She realized he had not known about these attacks either. Before anyone could speak further, the sky darkened. Massive shapes descended from above, their wings creating windstorms that forced colonists to shield their faces. 4 dragons landed in a semicircle around Vraxith. The largest was Karthix, his silver scales gleaming in the light of the twin suns. The colonists panicked. Some ran back toward the colony gates. Others raised weapons uselessly, knowing they could not fight 5 dragons. Gregory Hayes stood his ground, though his face had gone pale. Karthik spoke in the dragon tongue, his voice like rolling thunder. "Vraxith, we felt your distress during the Karathix attack. We came to ensure you completed your task. But it seems the situation has become complicated." Another dragon, the green-scaled female from before, hissed, "The humans have weapons trained on us. They show their true nature, violent and ungrateful, even when one of our kind shows mercy." Vraxith responded, his voice weaker than usual from his injury, but still firm. "The child speaks truth. She defended me against her own kind. There is honor in her, Karthex. More than we gave her species credit for." The 4th dragon, an older male with bronze scales similar to Vraxith's, rumbled thoughtfully. "Then perhaps we should destroy this colony now and eliminate the problem entirely." The colonists understood the aggressive posture even if they could not understand the words. Gregory Hayes raised his hands in a gesture of peace, though his jaw was tight with fear. "We don't want war. We're just trying to survive." Lily suddenly ran forward, positioning herself between the dragons and the colonists. Her small form looked impossibly tiny before such massive creatures, but her voice rang out clear and strong. "Please, stop! Both of you." Karthix lowered his massive head, his cold eyes studying her. The human child speaks. This should be interesting. Lily's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest, but she forced herself to keep talking. "Varaxith saved my life when my people left me to die. He could have killed me. Dragonlaw probably told him to kill me, but he didn't. He showed me mercy and kindness. He taught me, protected me, and cared for me like I was his own daughter." She turned to face the colonists. "And my people did look for me. They did try to find me. They thought I was dead, but they never stopped hoping. That's not evil. That's love." She looked back at Karthix. "You say humans are violent and ungrateful, but I'm standing here thanking Varaxith for everything he did. I'm defending him with my life. Does that seem ungrateful to you?" Karthix was silent, considering her words. The other dragons shifted, uncertain. Lily pressed on, her voice shaking but determined.
"You're both scared."
"Dragons are scared humans will take over your world. Humans are scared dragons will kill them for being here. But fear just makes everything worse. Varaxith showed me that. He was scared too, scared of breaking your laws, scared of being punished. But he chose compassion anyway. He chose to help someone who needed it, even though it was hard and dangerous." Her mother stepped forward, her voice trembling. "The child is right. We didn't know dragons were intelligent beings with culture and laws. We thought you were just animals. We were wrong, and I'm sorry. We damaged your territory because we didn't understand it was sacred to you." Gregory Hayes came forward as well, looking uncomfortable but resolute. "I'm colony leader Hayes. If we'd known we could communicate with you, we would have tried. We've been desperate, fighting to survive on a planet that seems determined to kill us. But desperation isn't an excuse for disrespecting your home." A younger colonist from the crowd called out, "Some of our people have been sabotaging dragon sites on purpose. They're angry about the harsh conditions and took it out on you. But not all of us support that." Karthix rumbled deep in his chest. "You admit to these violations?" Hayes nodded. "Yes, and I'll work to stop them if you're willing to give us a chance. But I need to be honest. We can't leave. We have nowhere else to go. Our ship is destroyed. This is our only hope for survival." The bronze dragon beside Karthix spoke. "Then we are at an impasse. We cannot allow you to remain if you continue to damage our world. Yet driving you away would mean your deaths." Varaxith pulled himself up to his full height despite the pain in his wing. "There is another way. Let me be a bridge between our peoples. I have lived with this human child. I have learned that they are not so different from us. They protect their young. They value honor in their own way. They can learn and adapt." Lily ran to Varaxith's side and held up her wrist, showing the bracelet she had made him. He lifted his claw, displaying the matching gift. "We made a bond. Human and dragon. If we can do it, others can too." Karthix stared at the tokens, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "You propose something that has never been attempted. Coexistence between species. Why not?" Lily asked. "Humans have medicine that could help dragons. Varaxith told me you have genetic problems because your population is small. We have technology that might solve that, and dragons know how to survive on this planet. You know where water is, which plants are safe, how to read the weather. We could teach each other." Her father stepped forward, putting his hand on Lily's shoulder. "My daughter survived because a dragon had mercy. That dragon is injured now because he protected her from predators. They saved each other's lives. If that's not proof that cooperation is possible, what is?" The dragons conferred among themselves in their language, a rumbling conversation that the humans could not follow. The colonists waited anxiously. Varaxith leaned down, and Lily wrapped her arms around his massive snout, offering comfort. Finally, Karthix turned back to face them. "We will agree to a trial period. 1 full season. Varaxith will serve as ambassador, teaching humans our ways and explaining your needs to our council. But there will be conditions." Hayes nodded quickly. "We'll accept reasonable terms. No expansion of your colony beyond current boundaries. No hunting of sacred creatures. All water collection must be approved by dragon monitors. And any colonist who deliberately damages dragon sites will be expelled from the colony to face the desert alone." Hayes swallowed hard but nodded. Agreed. "And in return, we will share knowledge of safe water sources. We will warn you of dangerous weather patterns. We will not attack unless humans break the agreed terms. It was not a perfect solution, but it was a start. A fragile peace built on the trust between one dragon and one human child. Lily looked up at Vraxith. Does this mean you don't have to leave? Vraxith rumbled, a sound that was almost like laughter. He touched his snout gently to her head. Through gestures and the few human words he had learned, he made her understand. He would visit. They would not be separated forever. Her parents approached cautiously. Her mother spoke softly. Thank you for saving our daughter. We owe you a debt we can never repay. Vraxith inclined his head in acknowledgement. He looked at Lily one more time, memorizing her face, then spread his wings. The other dragons followed his lead, launching into the sky. But before disappearing, Vraxith circled back once, flying low over where Lily stood. She waved to him, and in her heart she knew this was not goodbye. It was a new beginning. Over the following weeks, Vraxith visited the colony regularly. At first, only a few colonists were brave enough to approach him. But slowly, trust grew. Children like Lily were the first to overcome their fear, and their parents followed. Dragon teachers began sharing survival knowledge. Human doctors examined dragon genetics and proposed solutions. Lily split her time between the colony and Vraxith's canyon home. She became a translator of sorts, helping both species understand each other better. She taught young dragons to play human games, and she taught human children to respect dragon customs. The peace was fragile and not without problems. There were still those on both sides who resented the arrangement, but whenever tensions rose, people looked at Lily and Vraxith, at the bond between them, and remembered that understanding was possible. Years later, when other human ships arrived seeking refuge, they found something unprecedented, a colony where humans and dragons lived not as enemies, but as neighbors. And at the center of it all was the story of a girl left to die and the dragon who chose mercy.